So I just finished reading the newest edition of the High Republic stories, Star Wars The Rising Storm. So in the first half of this video, I'll first do a spoiler-free review and let you know what my thoughts are and whether or not this book is worth your money. Then in the second half, we'll go into some spoiler territory, so if you're interested in either or, make sure you check out the timestamps down below. Star Wars The Rising Storm, written by Cavan Scott, who is a very established writer for the Star Wars franchise, brings us a very interesting story set during the era of the High Republic. And let me start by saying, this book is dark. Very, very dark. And much darker than the first book, The Light of the Jedi, and dare I say, it takes a lot more risk. Cavan Scott really does bring to life the darkness and destruction of conflict in the Star Wars universe. Now, don't expect some Game of Thrones level type of gore, but this book for the most part is willing to dive into the darkest parts of violence in Star Wars, as well as the darkest moments of some of the characters. But beyond being edgy for the sake of being edgy, Cavan Scott really demonstrates his understanding and deep knowledge of the philosophy behind Star Wars, and more specifically, the philosophy of the Jedi Order. The book makes a very clear and well done effort to continue to draw a distinction between the High Republic Jedi and the prequel Jedi, despite writing the story in such a dark setting. In the Rising Storm, the Jedi Order is stretched to their limit, and arguably more so than the Great Disaster. The book is written in a way that is very different to how Charles Soule decided to write The Light of the Jedi. Where The Light of the Jedi throws you in amidst the action, the Rising Storm builds up to the main event, which is the Republic Fair. Not to give too much away, but the book does a fantastic job of building up the suspense and the climax of the story, which is very much worth the wait. Overall, I really love the pacing. There's also mentions to the other new book, The Race to Crash Point Tower, which is also nice to see. For the most part, the jumping between different characters' perspectives can be quite difficult at times, and the names and characters blur together at some points when the pacing is especially fast. But if you have been following all the High Republic stories so far, it won't be much of a problem. There are a few newly introduced characters, but for the most part, they do play very, very minor roles in the story, so you don't have to worry if you don't remember their names. There are a few notable characters that receive a pretty decent character arc in the story, but keeping in mind that the journeys of these characters are far from over, so we will undoubtedly see more development in the stories to come. Interestingly enough, The Rising Storm is a promise to Star Wars fans that the High Republic just keeps getting better and better. And dare I say, I actually like this book more than The Light of the Jedi, so that is saying quite a lot. So if you're considering whether or not you want to buy this book, all I can say is go for it. I promise you picking up this book is definitely very, very worth it, and I can tell you it will be quite a ride. So that ends my spoiler-free review, so spoilers are definitely coming up ahead, you have been warned. There were so many amazing moments in this book, it can be quite hard to pick out which are my favorite ones, but one that really stands out is the introduction of the new character Ty Yorick. There is a lot to Ty Yorick that we still don't know. It becomes apparently clear that she has been taught in the Jedi way, albeit somewhat limited, and she represents an interesting case of a character that walks a fine line between the light and the dark. While she isn't an evil person by nature, she is more than willing to revel in un-Jedi-like activities, as well as use her emotions to use the Force. So as a saber for hire, her journey is going to be quite interesting moving forward. Elzar Mann is probably my favorite character in this book, and arguably has the strongest character arc in the entire book. We start off with Elzar at his lowest point, and we continue to descend further as the book goes along. We learn more about his previous romance with Avar Kriss and his new distraction, Samira. As we get to know about Elzar's character, we learn that he is a bit of a soloist, and despite all the bravado and claims of solving his own problems by himself, he is a character that yearns very deeply to develop close connections with others, deep connections which his fellow Jedi comrades may not necessarily be able to recognize or entertain. In many ways, he's sort of stuck in the past, clearly still yearning for the bond he had with Avar that has now gone cold. And while he may have found something with Samira, it's quite clear that this cannot last. Their paths are just too different. More importantly, by the end of the book, Elzar recognizes that he cannot solve every problem on his own. For the Jedi Master, he has to learn that there is maturity and assuredness in interdependence and relying on others, and this is where his character arc lends itself to the overall theme of the book, which is unity. There is strength as a collective and support in the face of adversity. While Elzar reaches out to Stellan for help, he recognizes that he can't do everything alone. As much as the Jedi Master is powerful, he is not immune to his worldly troubles, and the same is applied to the Republic. The Republic Fair and the destruction of Velo represents a government that on one hand is ambitious, but also blind to its own weaknesses. The Nihil attack on Velo illustrates that much. While the High Republic may be affluent and powerful, it has underestimated the Nihil in their own hubris and failed to recognize the threat of the Nihil. The destruction of the Republic Fair is a major blow to the Republic, and Chancellor So's near-death experience will undoubtedly shake up the political landscape of the galaxy. While there is still good intent among the leaders of the High Republic, it is clear that they have been so caught up in their own prestige projects that they have forgotten what is the most important, which is the protection of their own citizens. Sure, it's one thing to provide bacta and relief efforts in the aftermath of a disaster, but another issue entirely not to prevent these events from happening in the first place. But the massacre of Velo serves as a surprising turning point for Republic-Togruta relations. What finally deters the Nihil attack from inducing more destruction is the unity between the Republic and the Togruthans. The introduction of Rigiza of Shili, the supreme huntress of the United Tribes and ruler of the Togrutas, not only serves as an important development in galactic history, but also adds a whole lot more to Star Wars lore in general. In terms of canon, the information that is on the Togrutas have been very limited, except for what we see in the Clone Wars. So, the fact that the Togrutas once had an independent and powerful state of their own is super interesting. Not to mention, there were mentions of an independent Mon Calamari state as well, so the book definitely contributes a whole lot more to the lore department. Bel's journey throughout this book has been nothing short of tragic. For the most part, it was about Bel Zettifar's journey to overcome his grief and to move on from the presumed death of his master, Loden Greatstorm. Just as he is about to get over the death of his master and move on with his life, he finds out that Loden is still alive and does his best to rescue his master towards the end of the book. But the death of Loden at the end brings all his hopes crashing down. Just when there was a slight glimmer of hope, and despite all the horrors that Loden has survived, the great Jedi ultimately dies without so much as seeing his Padawan become a Jedi Knight. And Cavan Scott does not pull any punches. From the mutilation of Loden's Leku to his final death scene, Cavan Scott really doesn't try to poeticize these horrific moments. Instead, he lays it out bare and dry, and the impact is immeasurable, drawing the whole story to a very bleak close despite the Republic's effort to launch a counterattack. This brings us to the artifact that Marchion Ro found. Clearly, this artifact is something of great power. It is still not clear what it does, but it is heavily suggested that the weapon is somewhat alive, a sort of creature with an insatiable hunger, a cloud of death that seems to consume everything in its path, and with Loden as its first victim, the promise of death and destruction is greater than ever. I really only have glowing reviews for this book, and it just might become my favorite High Republic book so far, but only time will tell. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe for more Star Wars content, and I will see you in the next episode. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.